You will recall from the operations manual that, on initial contact, student pilots who are flying solo and who don't hold at least an FAA private pilot certificate must use the call sign suffix student pilot. For example, Falcon Tower, Oxford 1234, student pilot. On the apron, request taxi for local VFR flight. Now, once acknowledged, it will not normally be necessary to our student pilots to use the modifier in subsequent transmissions until making initial contact with other ATC units, unless, of course, you feel that you are being instructed to do something that you're not familiar with. So, why do we do this? Well, let's listen in and find out.
If I'm a new student and I'm getting ready to go out on my first solo, let's just kind of start. I'm going to be making my initial call to ground. Why is it important for them to say that they're a student pilot solo, or maybe even specifically student pilot first solo? And I guess my question is, how does that help you when you're dealing with all the traffic and you've got the pattern full, planes coming, planes going, and you're overwhelmed? How does that actually help you when knowing that one person is the first solo?
It's very important for us to know that for many different reasons. The first thing is we will be a little more patient with the clearances. We might slow the clearances down for them, the taxi instructions, where normally I might say Oxford, whoever, only before I taxied to Delta, for a student solo, if he initiates that and tells me he's a solo, first off, we'll write solo on their strip in red. And that's an alert to us that, hey, slow things down. The other thing is when they get out to the approach in the runway, they're ready to go. We might give them build in a little extra time for them to get airborne, because I know they're going to be doing checklists and they're not going to be as quick as some of the other more experienced pilots. The other thing it helps us with is to build in more separation, give them a little bit more airspace to fly around in the pattern, and overall just to take it easy on them. If we know they're a solo, then we might avoid some clearances that we might use with a more experienced pilot. I'm not going to have a solo be doing 360s on his first flight out there, or I'm not going to tell him to fly to the soup mall and then enter a midfield downwind. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to try to make it the easiest where he's in the pattern, he can fly around, and just make it simpler for all of us.
One of the things you said is every aircraft has a strip, right? So what that really means, and correct me if I'm wrong, when anybody calls tower or when anybody calls ground, they get ready, what they're doing gets literally written on a strip of paper, right, with magnets or something on it. And as you move your airplane, it gets passed along from ground, and then whoever's working the traffic on the side that you're going. And so they literally have you with your information, what you're doing, the departure you're going. So they know what you're doing, and that's how they kind of keep it organized when they're looking at the radar and then who you are and who's number one. And so if you've ever been in line, and sometimes they say who's number one, who's number two, who's number three, who's number four, it's because there were so many planes in the run-up area, right, Chris, that they're
Right.
just making sure that they've got everybody organized. So it's next man up, right? And it's just
Right.
one after the other. And then one of the things that you said was by having that be on a first solo, that's designated on the strip. So when you're out there on your solo and you're flying, it literally helps them give you slower they'll talk a little bit slower. They'll make sure that their clearances are maybe a little bit easier to understand. Or in some cases, as you said, let's say you're up there on your solo and there's a runway change. I've been up flying where there's somebody a solo in the pattern ahead of me and they have a runway change. If I'm a dual crew and I hear that, and I know if I have enough situational awareness and I know there's a solo ahead of me, that actually helps me because I know they're going to give me something different, even if I'm number one. Even if I was the last one, and so theoretically I could now be number one, I know I may be worked around somewhere else so they can help that student get in there. So it actually helps me have some better situational awareness too.
Yeah, if the people listening really ignore everything that's been said, it is in your best interest to be as clear as possible that, hey, look, this is I'm on a solo or it's my first solo. It's only going to help you out. It's going to help the controllers. It's going to help other air crews in the pattern and around. It's really going to just help out everyone, and especially for yourself when you're already in this high stress situation.
And it also allows us to sometimes just use more basic phraseology, not even phraseology, just basic plain language to help them out in the situation in case they don't understand it.
For example, sometimes, I've heard people get confused. Now, I'm doesn't necessarily mean they were a solo, but I've heard people get confused. I would assume it was solos where there's a runway change and they get told to make like a left 270 or right 270. They're downwind, they're going to get put back on the base, and they may get confused with I got to go make right base. Where instead you may actually say, make a left 270 to enter left base or right. You may be whereas, if you know that it's a dual crew versus solo, now you may actually specify turn left, make left, something like that, right? Enter left base for runway 22, whatever it is.
Or we might even
Awesome.
land them and then just have them taxi back to the other runway. Sometimes for solo, that might be the easiest thing to do as well, is just have them land and then taxi back to the new runway.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a good point. That's a good point. Excellent.